Golden Bluted back with another video just for you, the college football fan. So if you are a college football fan, go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button. Look, it's a long college football offseason, but I'm here to get you through it. Don't forget to go check out our Patreon page. A lot of time and effort going into that. And I call my Patreons the shot callers because, well, they do call the shots around here. Also, we have a great website designed and created by Joey Foster. We have 8 great writers led by head writer Michael Walker. Day number 6 of me having whatever the heck this sickness is. So, yeah, my voice is still not there. Getting kind of mad about it, but I'm going to have to deal with it. So y'all bear with me as I try to give you as much energy as possible. Now, a while back, I did a video on sort of a cutoff line when Dabo Swinney talked about maybe the top 40 or top 50 teams breaking off from the NCAA and creating their own conference league and their own playoffs and national championship. Well, ESPN did an article this past week that actually clarified that just a little bit. And indeed, a lot of the big time decision makers are saying that college football will split off from the NCAA. But now there's a little bit more details to it. They're talking about coming up with a compensation model for the players. So this is actually beyond the NIL. This is actually talking about the pay for play that everybody's been talking about, but still trying to not label the players as employees. I don't know how they would pull that off, but that's what they're talking about. They're talking about compensation model. That way you keep the players from being labeled as employees. The source for this compensation model, pretty simple. The TV revenue that's going to reach into the billions once these new deals are completed. The NCAA will in fact cease to exist, so there'll be no more NCAA regulations. So the college football playoff, which is what they're claiming they will operate under, will have to come up with their own rules and own regulations. And the biggest thing that they're talking about is the massive gap in revenue between the Big Ten, the SEC, compared to the ACC, Big 12, and Pac-12. And that's on a conservative level. The gap could actually be bigger than $30 million a year. So basically what they're saying is the teams that are in the SEC and the Big Ten, and probably Notre Dame, are safe as far as making the jump to this new league or new conference. Now, some of the advantages for this compensation model or this inducement model, has been called 2 different things, are getting the recruiting battles or winning the recruiting battles between the SEC, the Big Ten, and the rest of college football. Basically what they're saying is amateurism is over. These players are going to get paid. And what they're thinking is a flat rate for an athlete revenue for the NIL without it being labeled actually as the NIL. Then after that, the athlete can earn additional actual NIL money revenue. The goal of this is for every single player in this new conference or power league to get paid. Every single one of them. Doesn't matter if you're an offensive lineman, the quarterback, the wide receiver, you all get paid the flat rate. Now on top of that, you can earn more money through your NIL deal on the side. I don't know how they would be able to keep athletes being labeled as employees if they go down that road. If you're paying everybody a flat rate period, if you're in this conference, if you're in this new league, you get the flat rate. Then on top of that, you can get NIL deals. To me, that screams employees. So I don't know how they would keep that separate. Now, this is just my opinion. I think if the ACC cannot find a loophole in their current TV contract, they're screwed, because that was one of the worst deals you could ever imagine, and they're stuck in it till 2036. So the ACC is actually in the biggest trouble right now, because the Big 12, their TV contract and grant rights are about to be up. Same thing with the Pac-12. The Big 10 is currently negotiating their TV contract, and I'm hearing that it's rumored to be in the billions as well. So the ACC could be the ones that are majorly screwed because of all this. Now, the thing that I'm trying to figure out is there are some teams within the Big Ten and the SEC that don't have big fan bases, that are not big time money makers. Would there be a clause in this new conference or this new league to where they could actually kick those teams out? That way they're not grandfathered in just because they were part of the Big Ten or the SEC before this new big massive conference was created. Because right now, if there's no clause to be able to kick them out, then they would be grandfathered into this new conference or new league. So the teams that would be safe would be Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Maryland, Michigan, Michigan State, Minnesota, Nebraska, Northwestern, Ohio State, Penn State, Purdue, Rutgers, Wisconsin. That's the Big Ten. For the SEC, Alabama, Arkansas, Auburn, Florida, Georgia, Kentucky, LSU, Mississippi State, Missouri, Oklahoma, Ole Miss, South Carolina, Tennessee, Texas, Texas A&M, Vanderbilt, and of course probably Notre Dame would be safe. But if you look within that 31-member group, I see Illinois, Indiana, Maryland, Minnesota, Northwestern, Rutgers, Purdue right on the line. That's 6 teams in the Big Ten that aren't that big of money makers. makers. Now for the SEC, it's a little more shrunk. Actually, a lot more shrunk. Maybe just Vanderbilt, and Vanderbilt does okay in baseball. But as far as football goes, and this will be football driven, Vanderbilt is not a moneymaker whatsoever when it comes to the SEC. Will they grandfather all these teams up into the league, or will there be a clause to where, hey, if you don't get up to this certain level, you can be kicked out of this league no matter how long you've been in it whenever we created this new league? So that could be 7 potential openings right off the bat, dropping the number from 31 to 24. And then on top of that, they'd probably want to get to a league that's upwards around 40 to 50 members. So who would they look at to either fill those holes or to bring up to match those numbers to around 40 or 50? Strictly for argument's sake, I'm going to say that the grandfather deal does not go through, and that there is this clause that says, hey, if you don't meet this certain level in football revenue, then we're going to kick you out. So if that's the case, I have Indiana, Maryland, Northwestern, Rutgers definitely getting kicked out of the Big Ten. Purdue and Illinois right on the line, but I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. And then for the SEC, Vanderbilt's the only team that gets kicked out. So that's 5 open spots in the current Big Ten and SEC. But overall, that gives us 25 members. So really, we have more like 20, 25 open spots. So to help me with this argument, I actually went back and listed every stinking stadium capacity for every team in FBS college football. It would have taken forever to look up TV revenue and what they're actually worth. So I'm going by stadium capacity. So there will be a little bit of wiggle room in this. So based on stadium capacity, these are the teams that could actually be called up into the new league or conference, whatever you want to call it. The first team on the list is actually UCLA. They have the Rose Bowl. They'd probably have some leverage since the Rose Bowl, a great bowl, is held in the Rose Bowl, and it holds 90,888. UCLA is worth more than people actually realize. So I think they could actually be one of the first teams that get called up into this new conference. The next team I think would be Clemson. Their stadium holds 81,500. They're a big fish in a small pond when it comes to ACC. I think Clemson's brand is a great brand. I think it brings a lot of money. They've been to the playoffs a lot, won 2 national championships in the current playoff system. Third team, even though they've been kind of down recently, is Florida State. Doak Campbell holds 79,560. I think Florida State is a great brand. Used to be an elite brand. Florida State still makes a lot of money, and the brand is strong enough for them to be called up. The next team I think would be USC the Trojans, another Pac-12 team. The Coliseum holds 78,467. There's a lot of energy going into USC this year. They think they're going to be back, possibly win the Pac-12 and contend for the playoffs. Right behind them, staying in the Pac-12, Washington. Husky Stadium holds 70,083. Washington's brand is a little shaky right now, but it's strong enough to where I think they would survive and they would be called up into this power league. The next team would be out of the ACC. I think that's Virginia Tech. Their stadium holds 66,233. I think Virginia Tech's brand is very, very strong. Their football has suffered in the past few years because of Justin Fuente, but I think it could be easily rebuilt. Right behind Virginia Tech out of the ACC, the Hurricanes of Miami. Great brand. They do need to build their own football stadium though. Right now they share an NFL stadium, 65,326. That's fine and dandy, but Miami, you need your own stadium. You've outlived your welcome at that pro football stadium. Right behind Miami, another ACC team, Louisville. Their stadium holds 65,000. Louisville has been steadily increasing their brand, increasing capacity on that stadium. It's one of the best stadiums in the ACC now. I think they would have no trouble getting the call up to this new league. The next team on the list just joined the Big 12 actually, and that's BYU. Lavelle Edwards Stadium, 63,725. BYU has an international brand. I think they would absolutely have no trouble being called up to this new league. Right behind BYU, a Pac-12 team, and that's Cal. They hold 63,000. Cal's brand is really, really shaky right now, but I think the potential would land them in this new conference. Coming in right behind Cal is Iowa State. Jack Trice Stadium, 61,500. Iowa State has a very loyal fan base, so I think they would get the call up into this major conference. Right behind Iowa State, Virginia. I think Virginia is sort of a sleeping giant. They also have a 61,500 seating capacity. I wouldn't really say sleeping giant, more like sleeping potential. So I think that potential would get them the call up. Right behind them, Texas Tech out of the Big 12. Same situation with Virginia. Their stadium holds 60,454. I think they bring just enough to the table to get that call up. Staying in the Big 12, Oklahoma State. They have a great fan base. Oklahoma State's actually one of the higher revenue producing teams in the Big 12. Right behind them would be West Virginia. Right up there with Oklahoma State in the Big 12 as far as revenue producing teams. Their stadium also holds 60,000. West Virginia has a national fan base. A lot of people actually like watching their teams play West Virginia, so that would draw eyeballs from West Virginia and also from the teams that play West Virginia. Right behind West Virginia, a team from the ACC, NC State. Their stadium holds 57,583. I think NC State has a lot of potential. Their brand is growing, and I think NC State has a chance to have a really good season this year, which would help
help with their brand in the future. Right behind NC State, Arizona. Arizona is very, very iffy. I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt because they did invest into their stadium. Capacity now at 57,400, but Arizona is lost right now. Now, in basketball, they're doing great, but this conference will be based on football. So I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt, but there is work to be done for Arizona. Right behind Arizona, Georgia Tech, another team that I'm giving the benefit of the doubt. Old stadium in Bobby Dodd holding 55,000. I think Georgia Tech does have potential, especially since they've moved away from the triple option. Can they strengthen their brand enough to get that call up? Right behind Georgia Tech, a team that actually I'm saying is going to get kicked out of the Big Ten. Maybe they actually don't if the membership is stretched to 40 or 50. If it's stretched to 40 or 50, then Maryland would make the cut. But man, Maryland needs a new stadium. Their current stadium holds 54,000 and it is dilapidated. It is a dump. Maryland, you need to invest in your football if you want any chance of having a future in this new league. Right behind Maryland, Oregon. Now I say behind Maryland, Oregon's probably higher up on this list because they're a better revenue producing team, but because of their stadium capacity, it put them lower on the list. Oregon is solidly in this new conference or league, whatever you want to call it. Behind Oregon, we have Arizona State. They actually decreased the capacity, the Sun Devil Stadium down to 53,599. Arizona State's brand has been better recently, but it still needs some work. Behind Arizona State, two teams that I think could potentially get kicked out of the Big Ten, but if it is stretched to 40 or 50 members, then Indiana and Rutgers would make the cut. Indiana Stadium holds 52,929, and they have a good basketball brand, but remember, this is more football focused, and Rutgers, their stadium holds 52,454. Going back to the Pac-12, I think Utah would make the cut under the 40-team rule. Rice-Eccles Stadium holds 51,444. I think Utah's brand is growing and growing. Had a great season last year in football. I do think Utah needs to expand that stadium, and I think they would fill an expanded stadium. I think they would sell that out. Now, right on the line of the 40-team call-up would be North Carolina. I would give them the benefit of the doubt because they have a pretty good brand in basketball. Even though this is football-driven, their football is getting better. Now, if this is a 50-team league, they are safely in. Their stadium holds 51,000 in football, and they have the capabilities of growing that brand tremendously under Mike Brown. Right behind North Carolina would be a team that gets kicked out but could earn their way back in, and that's Minnesota, especially if this is expanded to 40, 50 teams. Behind Minnesota, another Pac-12 team in Stanford. Stanford's brand, they really need to work on that. For a while, it was looking really, really good, but it's kind of been shaky the past 3 or 4 years, so I think Stanford's shown enough potential to where they would get the call-up. Right behind Stanford is Colorado. It's been a while since Colorado's actually been relevant. They had a pretty good season a couple years ago. If they can sustain success like that and build their brand and show that they can be a revenue-producing team, then Colorado would most definitely get the call-up. And then the last team that I think would make the cut as far as the 50-team league would be Kansas State. I think they're the biggest brand left. They did invest a lot of money into their stadium. It only holds 50,000, but it is a nice stadium. I think they would show just enough potential to where they would barely make the cut. So Kansas State would be the last team that I think would make the cut. Now, another team that could barely make the cut would be Baylor. Their stadium only holds 45,140, but they're building their brand. They're looking really good in football. They're making a lot of money in football. Won a national championship in basketball, not this year, but the year before. So maybe I would swap Baylor out for somebody like a Stanford or a Indiana or a Rutgers, something like that. I actually think Baylor would be safely in because they have been building their brand recently. So if I didn't mention your team not making the cut for this 40-50 team league, your team has some work to do. Y'all let me know in the comments section where you agree with me on this and where you disagree with me on this. Who would you have in and who would you have out? That's all I got for you for this show. Like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you on the next show.